Hello, and welcome to my presentation on facilitating creativity and innovation, ISTE-E 2.6. So, this is a lesson that took me a little bit longer to put together. And even though it may not look like much, I had to gather a bunch of resources, do a lot of creative thinking, and make sure that I could put together something that was relatively cohesive enough where it would make sense for both the learners and the instructor. There's 3 pages to get through with this, so I'll be sure to detail each segment individually. Okay, so to start, this is the learner's checklist. The topic is going to be on environmental sustainability. This would be for grade 10, and the class in particular would be part of the science curriculum as applied sciences and nature. Now, I set this up in the format as the four learning C's of creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. Now, the way on how I'm working on this is based on its setup is students will have access to the appropriate resources for completing the task below. They may choose one activity from each box of an activity slash resource for completion by marking their one choice with a black circle. Or more specifically, they could either drag this over through the document, or if this was a printout, they could just circle it in. So to start off, we have the collaboration station. Now, this is a group required activity, and this would involve a collaborative research project. Now, by going over to the next page, I have a redaction page. This is supposed to involve the type of a little bit more detail in part of the instructor's eyes only, and it's supposed to give a little bit more of a leeway on the specifics of the activity. So here we have students will work in small groups to research and create a presentation on a specific aspect of environmental sustainability. And through here, I presented the four tools that they can work with, which is Google Docs, Zoom. Now, this one is a bit optional where they would likely have to do outside of class. They could do Microsoft Teams or Canva. So in actuality, it could seem more like that there would be three options instead of four. But the idea on here is if they need to be able to continue on their work through their presentation, they could do so within separate environments. And building on with this is that the tools for students include Google Docs for collaborative writing, Zoom or Microsoft Teams for virtual collaboration, or Canva for presentation design within their given options. And then we have the creativity corner. The activity is going to be the Eco Art Showcase. Now, this one is a lot more of a visual appeal or a visual aesthetic to present. Students will express environmental issues through art from using digital tools. Students may use Adobe Creative Cloud apps provided by the school, and platforms like Microsoft Paint or ArtSteps are acceptable for visual art exhibitions. As detailed by here, we have Adobe Illustrator, Microsoft Paint, Adobe Spark, and ArtSteps, which is likely the best kind of art-based or designing-based platforms, which should be acceptable to use for 10th grade level high school students to complete this project. Then going on with critical thinking challenge, we have the activity of environmental impact simulation. The four that I've chosen, which is going to work out well with this critical thinking activity, is using SimCity EDU, Climate Interactive, WWF Free Rivers, and Biome Viewer. These are all free to use software, and in particular, SimCity EDU. As someone who grew up actively engaged in SimCity, it is an excellent tool for strategic planning and community layouts. And I think that when you want to try to set up an environmental biome, this is an excellent tool to use for. It would also give students a good insight on how geography works within a given climate. But to be more specific, at least going on with the activity in detail, is that students will use online simulation tools to model and analyze the impact of various human activities on the environment. And building on from that is the use of SimCity EDU for urban planning simulations or Climate Interactive for climate change modeling are welcome, as well as WWF Free Rivers for mapping bodies of water or Biome Viewer for viewing natural geography. So each of them has their own merits, and students are allowed to use each of them as long as it gives them to think about how they want to be able to thoroughly engage with mapping out how they can envision their environment, besides how the way how natural environment is. Just a quick side note. I do have a sore throat as I'm giving this presentation, so if I do cough like every now and then or it's audible, I do apologize. Um, anyway, moving on with Communication Hub, we have the activity of reflective blogging. Now, blogging is a relatively nuanced activity that not many, to my recollection, school activities use, which is this is more of a personal sort of endeavor. But I believe that that students, knowing that blogging is an active part of their social life, can also utilize their knowledge of it into the classroom. In this case, we have students will write a blog post on their learning experience throughout the various activities. This is going to connect out from the collaboration, the creativity, and the critical thinking. The platforms to be used include Medium or WordPress for just general blogging. They're not too difficult. And then there's also the options of Padlet may be used for blogging with peers. This one is a little bit more of a user-friendly interface for connecting with other classmates. And Boom Writer, which is my personal favorite, is also acceptable for students to use. Now, each of these can range from either a little bit good for beginners, but might need a little bit more practice or hands-on work just to get the good hang of it. But the guidelines are going to be provided for them. And in fact, aside from some of the more common software here, guidelines will be given for each of these each of these pieces of software or utilities that students may not be overly familiar with. So, building on from this is that I believe that this is a way on how students can actively engage with the class, but they could choose their activity at their own leisure. They could either stick with something that's very familiar with them, such as Google based software, or they could be a little bit adventurous and work with things that they may not be familiar with, such as ArtSteps and Biome Viewer. It's not meant to be intimidating, and just because you don't know what the work is like doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be hard. In fact, some of the software that I've come across, which I wasn't know about, I found out were relatively easy to use. And I think that given the right instructions for the students, by the instructor, I think that this would be an excellent way for students to be able to expand out their choice options on how they want to engage in their work. Of a side note, at least in the case of the learner's checklist, is that each activity is expected to span from 1 to 2 class periods, meaning that some of these activities, while they might seem straightforward, could take a little bit more work to go through with them than others. For example, writing out a blog through WordPress might take a little bit more time than it would through Padlet because of your working individually rather than a group. So, to finish this up, I put together a general assessment on how this overall presentation is supposed to reach out towards students and learn and educators as a whole. Um, to be a little bit more direct, the subject is environmental science, and the topic is environmental sustainability. It's geared towards students within grade 10 as part of a pseudo introductory course towards environmental science. Um, just to give the general notion, I also have my name here and also the date. As part of what the instructor would be able to put in through here. The objectives is ultimately by utilizing the choice boards, it will provide learners with options to explore and engage with the topic using various modalities, incorporating the 4 C's: collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication, and leveraging different technologies. The materials that are ultimately going to be used here is a lot of notebooks to jot down notes, laptops and tablets to be provided for students unless they have their own, which is where they're going to do a majority of their work, and thumb drives if they need to be able to share their work through passing along. They could share through collaborative software such as Google Docs, but I would not recommend that students utilize cloud-based software and instead just focus on going a little bit more traditional with thumb drives because I feel like that cloud-based software is a topic or more like a software use in a league of its own, which wouldn't be the primary focus on. And then the initial assessment in incorporating all the passings of the redaction and the initial learner's checklist, as I previously mentioned, is the goal is for students to focus on the quality of collaborative work, the depth of critical thinking displayed in simulations, the creativity exhibited in art projects, and the clarity of communication and blog reflections. Essentially, I broke this down based on the three C's, not in any particular order. Collaboration. Through group projects, learners develop teamwork skills. Creativity. Artistic expressions encourages out of the box thinking. Critical thinking. Simulation activities require analysis and problem solving. And communication. Blogging enhances communication skills. This is supposed to help sort of like stimulate and grow parts of the learner's brain in ways that they may not realize. And depending on what they want to work with, is this is going to each of these parts, as I mentioned, through each of these softwares, is going to exercise their own different learning capabilities. It's their choice how they want to, what kind of activity. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. They must choose each of the four activities. However, within these four activities, they are allowed to choose which one they may work with. So, for example, if I was the student in this case, the one that I'd be most comfortable working with is for collaboration station. I would want to utilize or work with Canva. If it was the creativity corner, I would be more comfortable utilizing Adobe Illustrator. For critical thinking challenge, because as I mentioned my bias with SimCity, I would go with SimCity. And then for the communication hub, as I've also talked about my favorites, I would go with Boom Writer. Now, obviously, this is all based on the ideal settings of an editing page, so it's not necessarily finalized, but this is what it would look like. This would be digitally sent out to students, but also passed out in physical format so they could fill it out with both mouse and pencil or pen. But this is what it will look like. And for future lessons, it will give me a general idea on where students are most comfortable working based on their voice and preferences. And in going through with this, I feel like that this is an excellent way for students to be able to exercise each part of their brain. This is like the equivalent if you were like to go to the gym and you're to exercise like the body, arms, legs, pretty much every single of the main sections of your body, except this is part of the whole learning enigma of going through a simple lesson. Some of them will be a little bit more, not necessarily too challenging because they might be a first time exposure, but that's part of the whole learning curve is you're learning on two ends. You're learning about completing an assignment through the given software or utility while also learning about the software utility itself. Now, because some of them are a little bit more less known, such as anything outside Microsoft, Adobe, or Google, I've listed down some links on the bottom here, which is supposed to link towards the websites of some of the software here that might be not as well known, but it's also where I was able to help out through these websites and compiling some of the information on here through this slide and the previous slides. But yeah, I believe that's it. That's all I have to give for this lesson assessment. Thank you so much for taking a look at this. I do apologize for the cough that might have been heard earlier, and I hope you enjoy it. And as for everything else, assignment wise or screencast wise, I will catch you next time.